Morning, Hyder. You're up awfully early.
The
The challenges, what? Sounds like you need to pick me up. You want some coffee? Then we can get on to our normal daily activities of, I'm gonna go get the coffee. Whoa, what? What is all this? Why is this box in the corner? And why did you talk like that? I mean, sure though, I guess I can live with that. I've always been curious what this game is even like. I mean, it's made by Classic Rare and nobody ever talks about it. I'll get this taken care of real quick and then we can go on with our morning. Let's get this show on the seas. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Rareware was one of the best developers in the 90s. Working as a second-party developer for Nintendo, Rare would release some of the best and most popular games on both the Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64. The Donkey Kong Country games, Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Jet Force Gemini, Blast Corps, GoldenEye. These guys were on top of the world, constantly innovating and finding new ways to push the hardware no matter the console, to the point where they made a game that couldn't run on the system it was made to be played on. It was while working on their upcoming N64 game Dinosaur Planet where things started to go a little awry for the studio. Shigeru Miyamoto in all his wisdom looked at a Zelda-like adventure game with dinosaurs and anthropomorphic animals and thought, yeah, you know what? This shouldn't be any fox, it should be the fox. Yeah, great call. From there, things got even sillier, as Rare was also not receiving what they believed to be sufficient funding from Nintendo, who were just never seemingly willing to commit to them and just buy them outright. Rare decided that they didn't want to mess around with an open relationship anymore and began to hear offers from companies on a true acquisition. Because of their insane pedigree, a lot of companies were gearing up to get their hands on the developers. Activision, Nintendo, and Microsoft would all start making offers to Rare, with Microsoft ultimately being the most willing to shell out the big bucks to inherit them. Of course, depending on where you look, they did that because they wanted Donkey Kong, who did not come with their purchase of Rare. But hey, who among us hasn't accidentally spent $375 million for a chance at the big ape? Let he who's without sin throw the first banana. Now I must ask, why didn't you stop me? I specifically asked you to stop me if you heard this one, and I know for a fact that you have. I'm not the first guy with internet access to relay this tale, and I certainly won't be the last. This stage of Rare's life has been retold time and time again because Rare was so prolific in the 90s that their departure from Nintendo stuck out in a crazy way. Donkey Kong would quickly fade from the platforming scene when the GameCube arrived, Banjo 3 never came to be, and Star Fox Adventures ended their primary Nintendo outings with... Yeah, no, definitely the right call, Miyamoto, I agree. Regardless, this golden era's sunset became such a watershed moment not just in the industry, but for a lot of content creators as well. This story was frequently recited in videos on these Rareware classics, and yet they just always stopped when they got to Star Fox Adventures. You might get a Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts in there, or maybe even a quick tantrum because the funny squirrel doesn't say f the way I remember, but there's just a period of time that pretty much never gets explored, and even to this day has rarely been brought back into the light. I'll stop. If you didn't know better, you could probably just stumble into the thought that Rare hadn't made games at all for the better part of 6 years. But not so. In fact, it wouldn't be long until the dynamic developers were back with their newest title. Oh, and don't worry about stopping me anymore. Nobody's heard this next one. Grabbed by the Ghoulies is the first game Rare made for the original Xbox. Released in 2003, this was the first fruit to grow on the shiny new branch of Microsoft's tree. It was time to get that return on investment, and at release, the title did not receive glowing praise. Hell, it barely sold over 100,000 units in its lifetime. Damn, no Donkey Kong and no sales? We're going 0 for 2 already. It's fine though, plenty of the greatest artists weren't appreciated until long after they died, and I feel pretty confident saying this game's long been 6 feet under. So now all that's left to ask is, what is Grabbed by the Ghoulies all about? Did it deserve the critical shrug it received at the time? Does it deserve the continued shunning from the world at large? Will this guy stop looking at me like that while brandishing a pool cue? Ugh. I really hope at least the last one's a no, but no way to find out until we get this graveyard going. The game opens up on our protagonist Cooper and his girlfriend Amber hiking through the wilderness as a storm comes in. Cooper, the clearly wonderful boyfriend that he is, tells a struggling Amber that they should have listened to him when it comes to direction and now they need to find shelter. Oh, off to a great start with this one. Can't see anything wrong with making the protagonist an unlikable dickhead this early. No siree! Amber then spots an old manor home to one Baron von Ghoul. Cooper, ever the pleasant fellow, tries to tell his girlfriend that she should drag that stuff another 5 miles to a nearby town because this place is probably full of creeps. The understandably upset but confusingly able to hear Baron takes offense to this claim by doing the only logical thing, kidnapping the girl that's at least half his age in order to get his hands on the both of them. Cooper makes his way inside the mansion only to discover that he's been trapped in not just with the Baron but with the Ghoulies. Our first brand of Ghoulies, these imps terrify Cooper, setting just another example of how great our main character is. It doesn't take long for him to start stomping the little things to Kingdom Come, and after doing so, we get formally introduced to Crivens, the butler of the mansion. He'll chime in throughout the game to give the player advice, but for now he gives us a map and sends us on our way. Here at the start, we don't have much access to the mansion. There's only one door to go through, and I'm sure Crivens would love for me to stop beating the hell out of him, so let's check it out and get started with Chapter 1, The Rescue. Oh. A quick time event. I guess it was 2003, these were the hot new mechanic at the time, for whatever reason. These are super scary shocks. These pop up a lot throughout the game and give you a limited time to input a button sequence. If you screw up while doing the inputs, you get stunned for a brief period and outright failure, damages you, I think? I only failed this once throughout my entire playthrough, so I honestly have no idea if there's a more severe outcome. It's not like it's hard to do these, but it's never a great sign to have the first non-tutorial screen of your game be press the buttons or die, motherfucker. This hallway is supposed to help set the scene to always be ready for one of these, but it goes on so long. I'm not tense, I'm ready to get a move on. Thankfully, once we're in the next room, it's finally time to experience more of the real meat and potatoes of the game. So let's get that first question out of the way. What is a Grab by the Ghoulies? Well, it's an action game that's sort of a beat 'em up, sort of a Donkey Kong 64 bonus barrel. We'll touch more on that second part in a bit, but for now let's just go over combat. You obviously move with the left stick, can move the camera around with the triggers, and pick up weapons with A. With your fists or any number of items you might find in the Ghoul Haven Hall, you press, what button was it again to attack? The what? Okay, so this is a weird one. Unlike most action games, Ghoulies asks you to use the right stick to attack in the direction you're holding. I wouldn't particularly mind doing this if it weren't for the fact that the X and Y buttons do absolutely zilch, which makes this feel real funky. It isn't all bad though, as it does allow you a full 360-degree range of attack. Since this game doesn't seem to have a lock-on, mashing X and whiffing your attacks because you probably only be striking directly in front of Cooper would be pretty frustrating. It may be a little weird and experimental, but I definitely can't say it's the worst thing in the world so far. Plus, you start out with a pretty decent health pool and relatively simple enemies to get you comfortable with how this game functions. I won't sit here and tell you I love this control scheme, but it's definitely not that bad. Past the billiards room, we find Amber tied to a chair and go to rescue her, before pretty swiftly getting our hopes dashed as she gets spun into a different part of the manor. Even better, we get swarmed with more imps. Things are going so well. While we're fighting these guys, let's go over the other key aspect of the game, challenges. Almost every room on our adventure will lock us in and demand that we take part in a challenge of some sort. This could be anything from just killing every enemy in the room, to surviving the onslaught for a set amount of time, or even just not damaging the mansion. Early on here, I find these challenges pretty fun, honestly. They're varied enough that even if it boils down to fight your way to the exit, it always adds enough to keep you engaged. And again, the game is more than fair with keeping you afloat, although I haven't seen any health pickups yet, so I wonder how we get it back. Hey, what the hell is this? What? Okay. So, from now on, Baron Von Ghoul will screw with your health bar at the start of every room, giving you a random but actually set amount of health per level. This isn't ideal, but in the next room over, you finally get your hand on health pickups in the form of Ma Soupswill Super Soups. These have various effects, but the main one shown off right now is boosting your health back up, so it isn't all doom and gloom. Drinking these should keep us going. Except for the part where the Baron screws with your health again in the next room. So picking these up only helps for the room you're in, which to the game's credit, the rooms aren't like horribly designed to accommodate. Every room is fairly short, designed to be a bite-sized obstacle where you do your challenge and get out. That being said, why? Taking away and giving out health at random through no fault of my own doesn't instill anything in me but annoyance. Which makes sense for the Baron to do, he's just trying to f with me. But why are you doing this to me, Rare? What did I do to be so f-withable? I understand that having 50 health at all times would have made some challenges a complete joke, but I feel like the workaround to that would just be to have health pickups be more scarce. Not super scarce, of course, this is a kid's game after all, but adding that sort of survival horror aspect of trying to keep afloat to the next healing item feels way more in line with this game than the Wheel of Pain nonsense. Really though, despite my bitching, this isn't that bad either. As I said before, the rooms are designed to factor in your specified health pool, it's just that I think that design is obnoxious. We make our way to the cinema where Amber is, only to once again find her getting dropped into another part of the house. We make our way down into the basement and find that Criven's already freed Amber, which she's a gigantic dick about for some reason. It's okay though. As you might have guessed by now, this game advances the plot by spinning its tires in the mud, so our stay in the house gets delayed again by the scientist guy, Dr. Crackpot, showing up out of nowhere, zapping Amber into a ghoulie, and then, just leaving. Why did any of that happen? Well, it's actually pretty interesting. You see, for now, our girlfriend's been turned into a deformed monster, so we just gotta get out of this basement and find our way to Ma Soupsville to work on a cure. After a couple more rooms of beaten up skeletons, imps, doors, we get to the end of chapter 1. I gotta hand it to this opening. The story just keeps shifting the goalposts, but at this point the combat's been fun, the challenges have been reasonably difficult, and on the whole the game has been, dare I say it, pretty alright. I'm almost kinda shocked. I mean, what could possibly be the reason this game isn't more fondly remembered? Chapter 2 starts off by introducing us to Ma Soupsville and giving us a bit of a checklist of items to hunt down in order to make the potion to cure Amber. It's also at this point I finally realized this game is never gonna open up to the player. This mansion has all sorts of doors, but you can only go down the path that the game wants you to at that given point in time. It's fine, the locations are still generally different enough to not feel like you're retreading ground in the house, but it does make the big, sprawling mansion feel like a really big hallway. But enough of that, we got a cure to put together. The chapter starts off with more of the same from last time, going from room to room, beating up enemies, and clearing challenges as we make our way to the lighthouse to get the first ingredient. On the way, we also meet my favorite character, Fiddlesworth the Groundskeeper. He's a jolly old fellow, and meeting up with him usually provides you with some sort of weapon for the stages ahead. Here he gives us a water gun full of holy water to help battle the undead nightmares in the lighthouse. This part of the game is a blast. There's a lot of zombie-type enemies and haunted TVs that your water gun absolutely destroys, but there's enough enemies that you have to stay on your toes. There's also a room with a Medusa creature that you have to sneak around while you find a key, because she's not undead, so the water doesn't work on her. This part is a highlight of the game, with each of the rooms on the way to the top of the lighthouse really giving you some of the best the game has to offer. And then on the way back out, Fiddlesworth takes the gun back. And then the game starts pitting you into a lot of bad rooms. The first room after isn't so awful. It introduces you to the Hunchback enemy, which hits hard, but besides having a lot of health, isn't all that tough. But then, oh god, a dining hall where you have to kill a lot of strong zombie pirates to get out, while also being bullied by skeletons that you can get on your side, but you have to kill the captain while not getting murdered by the rest of the creatures chasing you. 30 health feels like nothing in this room, and while you get access to healing items and other power-ups, it's a war of attrition that I was not feeling the whole time. It doesn't help that the game just took away my weapon for handling these sorts of things. That sure would have been nice to have here. A few more rooms of uninteresting backtracking later, and then you start the trek to the second ingredient in the chicken shed, which first takes you to the much less animalistic woodshed. I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to have to spend time in this woodshed. You start out with 3 health while a ton of enemies get chucked at you, with your last obstacle being a Medusa that's planted right in front of the exit. At my best, I was able to get over here with 5 health because there's a few soups that heal 1 HP each, and by god you better have found all of them and not gotten hit by anything else, because avoiding this thing's 4 damage attack is damn near impossible. And to make it all worse, this is easily the biggest room you've been in so far. So not only is it difficult, it's also an annoying run back every time you fail. I only got past it on my last attempt because for some reason the Medusa spawned over here instead of right in front of the door. After that, you end up in a room where you have to kill every enemy to move on, except eventually I just ended up with these 2 skeletons over here with no way to hit them. The only reason I managed to not die to the Reaper, who appears if you fail a challenge in order to insta-kill you, was because there was a can of soup tucked away that gave me an instant win on the challenge. I don't remember seeing this once the entire rest of the game, so I can only assume it was placed here on purpose in case this happened to the player. Instead of just, oh, I don't know, not making it impossible? Why are they there? This sequence between getting the water gun taken away and getting to the chicken shed was like a slap to the face after such a fun few rooms. I don't get it. This entire trek was either boring or immensely aggravating, with none of the rooms giving the same feel as what came before it. Thankfully, we run into dear old Fiddlesworth again, who gives us another gun. Old Edna shoots cloves of garlic to help us keep these vampiric chickens at bay as we retrieve another part of the cure. This run through the shed was such a nice way to blow off some steam after such an arduous trek to get to this point. And then after we leave, Fiddlesworth takes the gun back, and the egg we procured gets stolen out of our hands by a skeleton, meaning we got nothing out of that shed. Okay. We make our way through some more rooms back to the kitchen, where we then have to beat up the skeleton holding the egg, except this guy is constantly on the move and is only a little slower than Cooper. Cool. It's then revealed that this is Ma Soupsville's assistant, Mr. Ribs, who for some reason opted to just not say a word about any of this until after I chucked a hamburger at his f***ing head. It's fine, I guess. We just have one more ingredient before Amber's cure is done. which sees us go through a few more rooms before we meet up with Barbara Buffbrass. Barbara Buffbrass is up there with the worst people in human history. Babs gives us the soda can cannon, which much like the water gun and old Edna before it, is a lot of fun. It just beats the hell out of every enemy type you come across, and after even more frustration preceding getting this gun, it's so nice to get some fun challenges again. But then you clear a room of ninja imps and she shows up to take it back. And then the room floods with enemies while you need to take out a hunchback, which will block after taking enough damage, and you're already swarmed by a million other things. Oh, this is just the whole game. I tried so hard to give Grab by the Ghoulies the benefit of the doubt, but this cycle has repeated itself over and over again. Early on, when you weren't overwhelmed with enemies, combat was simple, but it was fun enough to keep going. But then, as the challenges start to pile on and you get more and more combat scenarios of enemies that can swing faster than you and have big health bars to contend with while you're probably about to get hit from behind, it becomes so miserable. You might notice that I keep highlighting the segments where you get a permanent weapon as being the fun parts, and it's because it's your only guaranteed method of crowd control. Normal weapons get broken if you get hit too hard, and you have zero combat option when it comes to dodging or blocking incoming attacks, so it's either you get the first punch in or you're getting destroyed. So it becomes a painfully meandering gauntlet from gun segment to gun segment where you're hoping to have a shred of fun, but it's after getting old Edna taken away so quickly after you first get it that you really start to accept that the game's not interested in making things fun. Just as soon as you start enjoying the game again, it quite literally rips that out of your hands and punishes you for thinking that could possibly be okay. Oh yeah, and that whole DK64 bonus barrel thing, that extends to the fact that these challenges are the biggest pile of mixed bag nonsense possible. I get that you need there to be something to actually do in these rooms, but did they check to make sure these were fun first? I mean, my god, so many of these challenges are clearing out the room's enemies, but with caveats that are not enjoyable in the slightest. Kill a bunch of enemies, but they're also hiding in objects in the room, and you can't kill any other types, so good luck with getting swarmed. Clear out this room, but only using weapons, so any moment that you're not holding something that only has 3 uses, your options are looking for another or saying screw it using your fists and bringing out the Reaper. I understand the idea of him. It's supposed to be a trade-off for ignoring the challenge, but it doesn't work at all. In these claustrophobic ass rooms, that's damn near a guaranteed death anyway, especially because the Reaper will gradually speed up to ensure you get hit. But if you're in one of the game's more spacious rooms, dodging the Reaper isn't difficult at all. I never felt like the Reaper was an interesting addition to the gameplay, and much like a lot of additions to the experience, it was just another nuisance. And that's made all the worse by the Baron. You know that thing I said about how the rooms were designed for the health they gave you in mind? No. 3 screens after the Hunchback and Notre Death, you're back in the grand hallway where you have to kill another door with weapons. There's weapons dotted all around the room, but there's also a ton of skeleton maids with weapons of their own, and the door now has a new doorknob punch move it spams while it never stops moving towards you. And everything hits like a truck, and you only have 20 goddamn health. Even if you think you're a genius and try to handle the skeletons beforehand, because they have a weapon, they'll probably hit you first. One time it even comboed me to death immediately after walking into the room off a respawn. Isn't that so cool? I could keep going about the challenges that I hate, but let's just get a move on. We get the cure and bring it to Amber, except as you can probably guess, because this game wants to spit salt in your eyes and pour lemon juice into the fresh stab wound it just gave you, this doesn't work. Haha, hee hee, the joke is actually it makes her even uglier. This boss fight f***ing sucks. Every boss in this game does, but I don't even understand how to actually fight this one fairly. Amber outspeeds, outranges, and outdamages you, so you can't effectively run or dodge. And if you're lucky, you'll get a combo in before you die? Maybe? I only just barely managed to cheese the fight because Amber gets stunned if she gets too close to the vines on a locked door, and that gives you an opening to fight back, but as far as what was probably intended, I really can't tell you, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't care. From here, Amber is cured for real, and you guys can finally get the hell out of here. Ending grabbed by the ghoul, son of a bitch. Actually, real quick, now that Mr. Ibs is making me stay to go kill the Baron, can I talk about the presentation really quick? Because for being a Rare game surely removed from the likes of Conker's Bad Fur Day, it's just kinda dull. I'm not gonna disparage the levels too much, I think the level of detail is good, and it definitely has moments that catch the vibes of a haunted mansion with that classic Rare charm, but there's a lot here that just feels so bland. For starters, every character interaction feels like a massive step down from this company. In Banjo and Conker, you have cutscenes where the characters, speak to each other. But in Ghoulies, it's presented with a storybook, silent film aesthetic where everyone speaks in text boxes. I get what they were going for, but it's not something I enjoyed or even really understood the benefit of. The storybook for cutscenes is fine, but I don't feel like the silent film thing works for talking to people in gameplay, especially with the knowledge that they've done much more on worse hardware. They make one small peep and then you just kinda thumb through it. The other thing here is that the dialogue is generally super unfunny. Not because it's trying to be serious, these jokes are just bad. a lot of referential humor that can't even elicit a sigh out of me, and I think there's a gag where Amber and Cooper look like they're gonna kiss and then don't, which there's no payoff for, to be clear. It's just, ooh, they might though, and then you get to the end and they never do. Like, what's funny about this? There's plenty more to gripe about, but if I ramble about every bad joke in here, we'll be here another half hour. There's also the music. The legendary Grant Kirkhope is the composer here. You might know him from such things as being Grant Kirkhope, but I am so sad this is how he gets introduced on this channel. Apparently he had a lot of fun working on this game, which I'm very happy to hear, but I'm sorry, this soundtrack did not hit for me. Even when I'm having a bad time with a game, the soundtrack can still offer something to me on its own merits, but outside of a few tracks on this, I feel like it was pretty forgettable. Obviously the theming is much more constrained here than on something like Banjo, and I think that's part of what makes everything kind of blend together. For example, I somehow didn't realize until looking for music for this video that the different enemies have unique battle themes. And there's a lot of them too, they just all blended together into my head. I shudder to call it bad, because ultimately Grant Kirkhope is brilliant at this stuff and nothing here is irredeemable garbage, but I just feel like his talents weren't well utilized here. Oh god, I can't put up with much more of this. Hey Hyder, did the hatchet work? What do you mean it broke in 3 swings? That was my great Aunt Lottie's! Aw man. Now there's a ghoulie I'm scared of. Well, Chapter 2 nosedives in quality, I think I've made my thoughts on that pretty clear. But Chapter 3, our quest to find the code to unlock the Baron's door? This is worse! More rooms of obnoxious challenges, stupid Wheel of Health bullshit garbage, and getting introduced to even more awful enemy types. Take the Warlock, who fires 2 projectiles that, due to Cooper moving like an 80-year-old whose knees calcified to become one with his ankles, feel almost impossible to stray out of the way of. And if you try to hide behind a wall to avoid them, have fun reaching the bastard before he dodges out of the way. This evil freaking wizard is the pits. And of course, the first time you fight one, you also only get 10 health for the cherry on top. This is one of the first rooms of the chapter, and it just gets worse and worse from here. More plotting through exasperating challenges, getting a brief reprieve when Fiddlesworth shows up to make the game tolerable for all of 5 minutes before remembering he's not supposed to do that, and then more misery. The game tries to be cheeky about it too, which isn't cute. After you find the first piece of the poem you need to recite to open the door to the Baron's room, Cooper has the audacity to say he thinks something bad is gonna happen as soon as he touches it. Buddy, something bad is happening. I'm still playing this game. Also, he's right, you get bombarded with enemies immediately, yay! You also spend a lot of time in this chapter retreading through places you've already been, but with even more annoying challenges than the first go-around. The workshop has a 1.5-minute long endurance test that's much worse than it sounds. The woodshed makes a great return where Fiddlesworth teases you by accidentally forgetting old Edna, but unfortunately takes it back 1 room later, leaving you in a challenge room that asks you to use weapons. Unlimited weapons. But no weapons. I'll run through the freezer with another 1,000,000 enemies, except you have to kill them in 10 hits, so you gotta use those hits to free zombie pirates to attack for you, all while not dying because you're getting surrounded. Even the new rooms have their own breed of unfun garbage to muck through, but none of it compares to the experiment chamber. Now listen, I've been very negative already about this game, and for what I feel are warranted reasons. It purposefully antagonizes you by taking away what little fun it offers, throws obnoxious challenges at you, screws with your health to give the game a really stupid way to balance difficulty, and as time goes on it gives you just the most annoying enemy patterns to contend with. So imagine a room that does it all. Upon walking in here, you get tasked with killing a warlock in 15 seconds. While I do hate this damn thing, it's super easy to put down because we have the soda cannon at our disposal. Thank God that the fun terrorist herself, Babs Buffbrass, shows up to immediately take away our gun. When I tell you that my heart sank the first time this happened, I mean it. I've already gone through so much to get to this point, and seeing her pop up to take away what little hope I had left was so demoralizing. And then the rest of the room happens. The challenge doesn't sound awful, it's kill 8 enemies using weapons. The problems are bountiful though, don't you worry. Remember, every weapon generally has 3 uses before it breaks, and while there's quite a few dotted around the room, they're usually kinda hard to pick up, and both the enemies and you can break weapons lying around on accident. Further, some of these enemies have big health pools like the zombie pirates in Medusa, which require a lot of weapons to take care of individually, while also still having that fun quirk where they can hit you before you even get a chance to hit them. There are power-up soups in the room, but if you don't set them up before you start the challenge, you have to waste time in this cramped room where you're probably just gonna end up getting beaten around. And if you die, you start from before you killed the warlock. Every aspect of this room sucks. You wanna know how I ended up winning finally? By complete fucking accident, I found out that there's a panel that if you bust it open gives you allied ninja imps. There's no way I would have ever guessed this. I just wanted to find a power-up and managed to find out after 15 minutes that there was anything like this. This is the worst room in the entire game by far. Don't take this as me saying the game gets better from here, it doesn't. But god, this is the worst. We run into Dr. Crackpot and then embarrass him by blowing his ass up in a cutscene. I can't even decide if I feel cheated that there's no boss fight, since it would probably be even worse than the others since he has a gun. After that, we go through a couple more awful rooms before getting to confront the Baron himself. This bastard has put me through the ringer all game. I can't wait. What the f? Crivens has beaten the dog piss out of him. Nah, just kidding. Apparently Crivens has been the Baron all along. Why? He had multiple opportunities to trap us into a room with things we weren't able to kill, and he chose to help us save the girl he kidnapped and then find the poem so we could get to this point? This villain blows. And now it's time for the final boss. Yeah, I sort of misconstrued it earlier. There's only 2 bosses in this game, but this one is so much worse. Baron von Ghoul has 200 health and is immune to all of your attacks until you knock him down to pick up his own cane and use it against him. At that point, he'll also run away and flash back and forth between being fully invincible and vulnerable to your attacks. You also get the classic Ghoulies combat flair of standing still when you swing, so there's a pretty good chance you're either whiffing because he ran out of the way or because he started being invincible for no reason. Oh, and the more damage he takes, the faster he gets, so good luck ever hitting him. During this phase, he also attacks in such a way that it feels completely random if he can even dodge out of the way. You do thankfully get 50 health, but because of these factors, you're probably gonna enter the second phase on lower health than you'd like. In this phase, the Baron takes to the skies of the bedroom, gives you a gun, and makes a terrible Star Wars reference. Comedy genius, that Baron. All you gotta do at this point is pick off the enemies he summons, dodge out of the way of his attack, and pop him. Rinse repeat until he finally goes down. The big issue with this is that it's so hard to dodge because keeping him in frame is there's a lock on. The game doesn't tell you about it. You hold both triggers to lock on to an enemy. I went through the whole game without this. Do you know how helpful this would have been? The game teaches you how to shoot each gun that functions basically identically each time you get a new one, but never how to lock onto an enemy. Oh. Bing, bang, boom, Baron goes down. I could bitch more about this fight, like how you sometimes just get forced to take a hit on respawn because f me for playing this game still. But whatever. I'm so done. We get the key to, I never even mentioned why we're doing this, did I? Around the mansion are a bunch of trapped kids, and the only way to free them was to kill Baron von Ghoul and get the skeleton key off of him. This gives way to the final chapter of the game, where we get 13 minutes to save the poor souls trapped in the mansion. This chapter is actually not that bad. Yeah, I know, that sounds insane, but it's true. You have to do this chapter in one 13-minute shot. The game doesn't save your progress between rooms, and so they dial back the challenges just a little bit, and they're actually usually reasonable. And dare I whisper this lest the game hears me. Fun? With the Baron out of commission, you also get 50 health to work with again that also doesn't fill between rooms, so you have to be smart and preserve your health. Gee, who thought that sounded like a good idea a few hours ago? And even better, if you die in a room, it just restarts you in that room with the time you have left. It's reasonably difficult, but enjoyable. I'd almost be happy if I didn't just spend the last 2 hours being the angriest man alive. We get to the last prisoner at the front gate of the manor and get ambushed by a horde of imps. Things look bleak until Ma Soupswill shows up in her only playable appearance in the story. We thwack the horde to death, rescuing Cooper and Mr. Ribs. The game then thankfully ends, with Amber and Cooper leaving Ghoulhaven Hall behind, having not grown or learned a goddamn thing, and the Baron's still alive actually, surprise. Nothing changed. I got graded at the end. I got an A. This is the only time this game will ever be involved with a 95%. Grabbed by the Ghoulies. This is one of the worst games I've ever played. I'm genuinely taken aback at how awful my experience with Grabbed by the Ghoulies grew to be. It wasn't anything special to begin with, but every passing room I found myself more and more aggravated with the experience. Its drab presentation, mediocre level design, and forgettable soundtrack all aren't doing the experience any favors, but if the gameplay was just as bland, I'd probably be able to let it go. It's not bland though. It's one of the most unenjoyable, obnoxious, tedious things I've ever gone through. Terrible combat with nothing else going on, and made all the worse by its deeply annoying challenges that serve as nothing more than a way to waste your time. I finished the game in less than 4 hours, but honest to God it felt like 40 with how abysmal everything got. Don't play it. In fact, do what everyone else did and just forget about it. Let this specter of the past return to its coffin, never to be thought about again. Well, Hyder, it's over. Let's just get at it. Wait, what? Oh my God, why is it still there? A completion challenge? there's bonus missions on the title screen? Oh, God, no. Give me that goddamn disc. I hope I don't play anything this bad again for a long time. This was such a monumental ordeal, and I didn't even get to have my coffee first. I'm gonna just go get the mugs, and then I'm gonna give this damn thing a Viking-style funeral. You in? Cool, I'll be back in a sec. What? Oh. You know what? Just try it.
Okay.